Durga Devi Gayatri Om Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimohi Tano Durga Prachodayat. Om Durga Devi Namaha. Om Adhisa Samyoga Namitta Hetu Padasti Kalata Kalati Tristaha Tam Visvarupam Bhavabhutam Nityam Devam Satchitastam Upasya Purvam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart, who appears to you as the universe, and who is the ultimate source of all living beings. Perceive that one as the primal cause of the relationship between spirit and nature, and as the partless divine entity transcending the three phases of time, past, present, and future. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvi Naviditamastu Ma Vidvishavavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with what we study. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all.
Om Hari Om.
So gathering here in San Francisco, the SRB Center, together for the first class of my visit here to the West Coast in October. We are on the very first day of Durga Puja. Durga Puja runs from the 1st through the 10th. And as it culminates on the 10th, those 9 days and 9 nights are called Navaratri. Only time in the world, anywhere, that Divine Mother is worshipped with such intensity and for such a length of time, and with such attention to detail. We've been in India when they constructed her image out of earth and various elements, and then over time dress her and put jewelry on her and feed her and sing to her, and all indicative of her coming out of a formless state, a manifested state, which everything does, and then manifesting herself, and then returning to a manifested state. For that, they dissolve her into the sacred river at the end of the 10 days, jewelry and all. And so she goes back to her formless state. This is all symbolic of what happens in the process of relativity, that is from the supremely unmanifested to the unmanifested to the manifested, or as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, from the Nitya to the Leela and then back to the Nitya. His most mature opinion in the gospel, he says, is that these living beings, their soul comes from the Nitya, the eternal consciousness, of which it consists of. Pure conscious awareness, they call it. And then it plays for a while in the names of the realms of name and form, called the Leela. And then returns, simply drops the form that it occupied or associated with, and then returns to the formless state again. So, Nitya Nila Nitya is that's called. And, he didn't say anything though about Maya in that formula. So you wonder then why so many people fall into suffering, this ocean of suffering, and remain there for lifetimes according to the Indian seers. Nitya Lila Nitya should just be a one lifetime affair. You see what's here in the manifested state. It's just the five elements and the five senses and objects and certain things, actions and so forth. But you have to remain free of the karma that can accrue if you identify with that state. That's not sportive play anymore if you start identifying with things that are not real, that are projected from the unmanifested state. That is, from deep sleep state into dream and into waking. And you do that every 24 hours as if to remind you that that's what your soul is experiencing, these three states of consciousness, called gross, subtle, and causal. So if you consciously meditate upon the causal state, that is, if you can awaken in your deep sleep state, and you'll see the seeds for all of creation there, which proves that everything is unmanifested. My teacher used to say, science thinks that matter is indestructible. Probably one of the reasons why they're so fascinated with it. That is the conversion of matter to energy and back, so nothing really happens, right? Essentially. But then he said, matter isn't indestructible, and it's not destructible either. It's unoriginated. So that's the Vedantic stance. See that you're seeing this coming and going of forms and names and worlds and lifetimes. And there's this witness soul behind it that's seeing all this, but you're not associating with that. You're associating with change. You're associating with the finite instead of the infinite. And if you were to associate with the infinite and know yourself, it's one of Christ's most important teachings, just know thyself. If you'd really come to know thyself, then you would know that all this change is called relativity or Maya or good and bad and virtue and vice and pleasure and pain, a whole host of other changing dualities that are going on. And you could remain poised or posited in this non-dual state of awareness they talk about, called nirvana or nirvikalpa or the sampragyata or mukti or moksha or kaivalya. There's so many words and different traditions for it. And then you would know that everything is unoriginated. What does that mean? It's a word we had to pick in English to somehow explain this one of the greatest tenets in world philosophy. In religious philosophy is called Adhyatma Yoga. There's no birth, no death for anything. It just appears that way. And so Maya has got you believing in the appearance of things. That is that Maya that's in you, that has come out of you. It's not something like a separate reality from you or an incarnate devil out to get you. It's just the nature of covering power, projecting power, of distorting power. And you should be seeing clearly, you're allowing this distorting power to cover all levels of your consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Or, if you want to put it that way, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling, earth, air, fire, water, ether. All those tattvas that are talked about that are superimpositions over Brahman. False superimpositions over Brahman. Brahman can't have a form, can't have a name. You can't assign it to nature. You can't make it change. That's why they call it changeless, birthless, deathless, timeless, beyond space, beyond cause and effect and karma. You need to raise your consciousness to that with a capital T. Tat means that in Sanskrit, so it's almost the same word in English. So when you can raise your consciousness to that non-dual state and remain there for an indefinite amount of time, then you'll destroy your karmas and you will rid yourself of these samskaras, these mental impressions that cause you to keep projecting worlds in name and form and time and space. As a collective whole, hundreds and thousands of souls doing that, including the ancestors and the celestials and the gods and goddesses. They're all involved in a huge projection, mass collective mental dreaming, I call it. And nobody awakens from it. The gods certainly don't. For hundreds and thousands of years, they hold lordship over realms of name and form called heaven or other lokas or akashas, and never realize their formless nature. So it's really only the illumined soul, the rishi, the yogi, the seer, who realizes formless awareness and lives in that state, no matter what the outer conditions may say otherwise. It can take on a name and form. It's not an impedance for that soul. You can just take it up and give it off like children outgrow old clothes. You put on new ones. The body's not in a position for that soul. Death wears thy sting. Isn't that Shakespeare that said that? My teacher used to say, put death in its own grave. Because from cradle to the grave, man is captivated by appearances that aren't real, that aren't true, that aren't actual. They're non-actual. They're apparent. You look for words in English to try and explain that word vivarta or adhyasa in Sanskrit. It means false representation, things that appear true which aren't. They're maya or samsara. And that's what we're learning about in chapter 6 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Shvetashvatara was a great rishi and grandsire of a line of great rishis, and left behind this Upanishad for us to contemplate. And we'll probably finish it this weekend. We've been at it for several years, looking sloka after sloka at taking it apart and looking deep into its foundation, which is what we do when we pursue the Jnana Yoga, or when we want to learn the Dharma, the eternal Dharma of the age. So one of the great questions comes up, samsara, this rounds of birth and death and ignorance, Buddha called it. The Buddhists call it nirvana and samsara. And there are other names for it in other different traditions. But even in our tradition you could say reality and relativity, except where is reality in our tradition? It's virtual reality or something. It has everything to do with things that are unreal again, see. And science never talks about reality. It's all into relativity. It doesn't even give reality room in its doctrine. So that's not fair. For beings who are born into relativity or are stuck in Maya, they need to know that there is this divine presence within them. And that's why I chanted Adihi Sa Samyoga Nimitta Hetu Kala Strikala Takala Vidrishtaha. Meditate on the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. That's where we ended last class here in San Francisco. That's where we stopped. I have it marked here, and it says start here in October. I've got my own notes here, see. And there it is, in Sloka, in chapter 6, which we're studying, Sloka 4. That is, Adihi Sa Samyoga Nimitta Hetu, Paras Trikala Takala Pidristaha, Tam Vishvarupam Bhava Bhutamidyam, Devam Svachitastam Upastapurvam. So, in English, very nicely rendered, meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. It's very Advaitic, it's very Vedantic. In other words, there's no difference between the soul and God. It's the same thing. And you'd have to know that the soul can't be created, like made out of dust or something. That's just sort of symbology. Maybe even outright nonsense when you become a non-dualist. The soul can't be created. The soul is what is the source of everything else. So they go on to say it's the witness of the three phases of time. Paras Trikala Dakala Pidristaha. Trikala, three phases of time, witnesses those. And it's also the primal cause of the relationship between matter and spirit. the primal cause of that. It stays itself causeless, but it would tend to bring these prime dualities together, like Shiva and Shakti, male and female principle, and set things in motion via those very subtle causes. What the Shaivites would call these spandas, vibrating spheres, very deep cosmological principles that are very deep back inside of the soul, which dictate everything. So, witnesses the three phases of time, that's you. Your own self is seated in your own heart, and that is the Lord and Master of everything. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad, you have to sort of keep a track of your three levels of philosophy when you go through it. You have to know which sloka he's talking about dualism, and which sloka he's talking about qualified non-dualism, and which sloka he's talking about non-dualism. So it's all inferring non-dualism, no doubt, because the Upanishads are non-dual scriptures, like the Brahma Sutras and the Advaita Gita and Ashtavakra Samhita and other great non-dual scriptures are there. They're going to tell you the truth as it is, without any trappings or coverings. Strip all the coverings off the gift and give that to you. So that's where we left off last time, and that's where we start today, talking about this. And he's about ready to launch into teachings on samsara too, that is relativity, or quite often what they call this march of events, phenomena. When you have cover all words like Maya and samsara, then you have to know that everything in name and form fits under that umbrella. And then you can pretty much understand or comprehend what they're talking about when they talk about the worlds of name and form that are constantly undergoing flux and change. That you can't build your house on sand, is how Christ would say that. You have to then find bedrock somewhere, and the bedrock you always find underlying. I was on the beach in Hawaii, and you dig down enough, you'll come to coral. You know, the sand is sitting on coral, so you find some sort of bedrock underneath that's more solid. You can base a lifetime on. A lifetime of worship, a lifetime of study, a lifetime of meditation, a lifetime of service. Those are the four yogas that Vedanta asks you to refine in yourself. That is, don't just be studious and don't be contemplative, or don't just be active and don't forget to be devotional. All four of those need to be brought out of your being, because those are concomitants of the Atman. Those are the qualities of the soul. They're not like ornaments you put on a Christmas tree. They're the green of the Christmas tree. It's the very nature of the soul to be that. It's not like you're adding qualities to it and becoming a dualist. You're just assessing and confirming that the nature of the soul is non-dual, and that all these wonderful dharmic principles are in it. You know, have a chart we get to today or tomorrow called Occult Powers and the Rain Cloud of Virtues, because Father of Yoga said, when the human being gives up his desire for occult powers, then he'll get the rain cloud of virtues. So most of what the West is involved in is the rain cloud, is the 8 occult powers. Domination over others, making things look attractive that are ugly. And you can go on and on looking at these 8 occult powers and see their manifestation here all around you on earth. In all the societies, in politics, and in politics it should become fairly obvious right now how people are into occult powers. And so when you give those up, that is, you give up the world, as Christ said you should, give away all your possessions and follow me, then you become owner of nothing. The only thing you own is your own soul. And at that point, then you'll become free. And you can have this deep meditation on the non-dual self. You can meditate upon the Lord seated in your heart as your own self. And you won't take any false competitors to the throne of the heart. So you'll take the ego away and you'll install the Lord there, your own Atman. And the ego has been usurping all this time. So then you renounce the selfish grasping of the individual ego called ahamkara, and you install the Lord in the heart instead. And from there on you live a dharmic life, divine life, or no life at all. And eternal life is no life. Get a no life. Don't be a low life. Get a no life. No life is the no hopes and fears. No heavens, no earth, no hells. No hopes, no fears. Say peace to all. For me, no danger be to aught that lives. And be non-violent, be truthful, and be singular. You see, in your commitment to divine reality, as is instanced by such great scriptures as Shvetashvatara says here. So, again, we find ourselves there on Sloka 4 and 5, in that area of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Meditate upon the Lord as seated in your own heart, as your own self. And it goes on to say, who appears to you as the universe. So that's a very pregnant statement. See, the universe is a manifestation of that divine reality. Most people won't see it that way, and if they don't, then it becomes a prison house of suffering for them. But if you can see it as a manifestation of God with form, that's what the Brahma chakra is all about. So you might take a quick look at that state. Then you will know that it has come from the divine, and being divine, and then you can see the divinity in it. But in the meantime, you have to be very careful of those concomitants of Maya: name, form, time, space, and causality. Those are the major concomitants of Maya. And the others are falling into these lack of virtues, and violence, and lack of compassion, and all the devilish things that plague us and plague our minds and plague life. And so it appears to you as the universe means that you're not seeing Brahman when you look at the universe. You're seeing its manifestation. You're seeing its projection. You won't find God here in name and form. You'll always find yourself here. If you can find yourself here, then you'll find out that all name and form came out of you, and this projection is your own doing. And you won't call God a creator anymore. Or you'll realize that there is no such thing as creation. It's all a projection from the mind. And there's no word, single word for that in English. In Sanskrit, it's called sankalpa. Beware of the dangers of sankalpa. Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita. This mind that gets out of control and wants more and more, wants to project more and more, enjoy more and more, own more and more. See, first it might start off innocently enough, and all of a sudden it's dominating over other countries and wants to control the world, wants to control nature, and isn't content just to leave things be, see, and dwell inside in its own innate perfection. That's why he starts out saying, meditate on the Lord as thine own self in your heart, and then says, it appears to you as the universe. It appears to you as the universe. So don't get drawn out by the appearance of things. Always stay first centered in your own self. Know thyself. Then once you see the appearance of the universe, and you'll know that it's all the beings there, you see, are manifestations of that divine presence. Appears to you as the universe and who is the darling soul seated in the hearts of all beings. The only thing that's real, the only thing that's immutable, the only thing that's constant and eternal is that one soul. Everything else is changing around it, sort of like the eye of a storm. Everything outside is whirling, and there's peace, peace, peace at the center. So, some of us have memorized that. So let me hear you say it. Om Adihi.
Om Adihi Sa Samyog. Together, right?
Om
Adihi Sa Samyoga Nimitta Hetu Parastri Kala Dakalo Pidishtaha Tam Vishvarupam Bhava Bhuttamityam Devam Svatitasta Upasya Purvam.
Yes. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we'll have to work on that. But if you've memorized the Sanskrit and can chant it, and then you can memorize the English, then you can spend hours meditating on that and pull it apart like I'm doing here. See, meditate upon the soul as your own self seated in your heart, who appears to you as the universe and who is the eternal source of all living beings. Recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. So that's other chants that we'll get to. I wanted to say about this 6th chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad that has 2 more familiar chants in it. One of them is Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam. That came from, some of you know that by heart, that came from this Upanishad. And one other too that we're familiar with. So it's good to close this 6th and final chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad with these wonderful chants that we have contemplated long before we actually reached them in the scripture itself. That is, I've called them out and taught them to you. And then when you come along and find them in the scripture, then you can connect with them deeper. So, you've done some contemplation, and maybe that will be enough to break the camel's back, or bring the toothpicks tumbling down, the structure of Maya tumbling down, so you can get that glimpse of your own self, the glimpse of Brahman that is at the foundation of everything. This English translation is interesting too. By previously meditating as seated in one's own heart on that adorable being who appears as the universe and who is the true source of all creatures, that one can be perceived even though it is the primeval cause of the union of spirit with matter, as well as the partless entity that transcends the 3 divisions of time. So we took that English translation and slimmed it down a little bit so that we would have a more ready and easily recitable version of it, but that pretty much says it all. And so that's this 5th sloka of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad of chapter 6. And you can go on meditating upon that, and we can cite it as being 6.5 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Let's go on to chapter 6, and so we move forward. Knowing him who is the origin and dissolution of the universe, the source of all virtue, the destroyer of all sins, the master of all good qualities, the immortal, and the abode of the universe, as seated in one's own self, that one is perceived as different from and transcending the tree of samsara, as well as time and form. So the tree of samsara transcends that. So you'll get off this rounds of birth and death in ignorance, and that way you'll put samsara behind you. Get thee behind me, Christ said. That's all things devilish. Get thee behind me. And then you'll see the one unchanging reality. Samsara is used a lot. You can even sing about it in beautiful hymns. Vani Saraswati Bhakti Devi Bhagavati Parvati Mampa Mangalarupini Varde Sharde Sankataharini Sanmati Daini Mani Saraswati Vardevi Madhavati Parvati Mampari. So of course Saraswati is the goddess of speech and knowledge, arts and music and so forth. So, and the Vedic goddess, the original Vedic goddess, Saraswati, called Umavati, was the first form of the Divine Mother ever listed in any scripture in the world. She's in the Rig Veda. She also appears later on in one of the other Vedas. And, Upanishad. Comes out in the Upanishad. And Kano Upanishad, actually, call her Umavati there. So she, as far as all of these verses go, she is the auspicious form, the giver of blessings and good thoughts. But what about samsara? They sing. Aste darini japama samsara sagar dharini ma. So samsara sagara means the ocean of suffering, the ocean, the rounds of birth and death that souls find themselves in, lifetime after lifetime. When they identify with name and form and time and space and the cause and effect that comes from it as being real. If they can just enter into relativity and play there and sport and not get attached to anything, not take anything too seriously, and only vibrate with the underlying reality behind it, then they're perfect players. They become the divine sporters. They can separate the wheat from the chaff, or the milk from the water, like the swan can do. In Indian history, this mythology, the swan can secrete something from the saliva that separates the milk from the water, so you just drink the cream and leave the 2% behind. So they call that a hamsa, a swan. A hamsa, or a paramahamsa, a great soul, can separate out the illusory from the real and leave the illusory behind and only stick with the real. And that reality finds that reality seated in his own heart, or his or her own heart, as the Lord. And so Shvetashvatara is bringing those kinds of teachings to bear for us. He is perceived as different from and transcending the tree of samsara. So that's why I put this up. You see the tree of samsara teaching by Shankara. This is V4 on mine. It's the fourth chart I ever created in the Vedanta category. And you can see there what he says. He says, taking this world as the tree, the seed of this tree is tamas, that is slothfulness or inertia. The seed of the tree of samsara is, in other words, the whole thing starts off with this, everything out of equilibrium and inert matter, inert mind too. The idea of the self as the body is the root. So if you think your body is your true self, that's the root of samsara. So that's where your problems begin. It starts out tamasic, and then you add your mind to that, and the mind attaches to something physical like the body, which is going to decay and die. And there, all of a sudden, you're deeply caught and tied to the tree of samsara. Krishna in the Gita, if you remember, talks similarly about the ashwata tree, with its roots above and its branches below. He says, that's Maya. Everything is topsy-turvy. And you take the axe of firm detachment, and you cut down the ashwata tree, he tells Arjuna. So whether you go to Krishna or in the Gita, or whether you go to Shankara and the Vivikchudamani, they're warning you very sternly about keeping this tree behind you. So maybe you want to go more towards the wish-fulfilling tree. I can sing you songs about the wish-fulfilling tree. God is the wish-fulfilling tree, but you have to come close to the tree to say what you want. People don't get what they want because they stay too far away from the tree and speak their desires, you see. But if you can come close means to meditate. So if you meditate on God, you can't just pray to God. That doesn't bring you very close and doesn't give most people what they want. But if you could meditate on God, then you get very close to God, and then you speak what you want to God when you're close. The problem with that is when you get close to God, you don't want anything anymore. They're tricking you. You think you want things, you say, okay, I'll meditate for a while, see if I can get close to God. So all of a sudden you see God, maybe seated in your own heart as your own self. Then what's there left to want? You have everything within sight of you, and you don't need to ask. In fact, you'll probably remain the silent sage and sitting in deep meditation most of the time, like Buddha under the bo tree or Christ in the wilderness. So, otherwise, it's the self is the body, is the root attachment, the very root of this tree. And actions are its soil and water. So that's karma yoga. So you're always doing action, so you need to introduce something that will reduce the karmas and neutralize and destroy the karmas. We'll talk about that in a chart too that I have coming up to show you. Pranic life force is the trunk. So there's most people, I've called prana before the most addictive substance in the universe, because if prana were not in, say, alcohol, or if prana were not in cocaine, or prana were not in other things people attached in, then they wouldn't like them. You see, it's the prana that they like. It's the vital force in the thing that you like. Food too. You think, oh, I'm addicted to food, but it's the prana in the food that you're after. And it's also the prana that you're after when you take rebirth with your ancestors. They also are very attached to prana. And prana are channels that go inside from your physical body to your subtle body, from one world to the next. You flow along these channels. And so that's why the yogis want you to control the prana. If you can control the prana, then you can control the senses. That's going outward, and then you control the mind going inward. So you have control of the whole shooting match if you can control the prana. So otherwise, though, it's prana is the trunk of this tree of samsara. You get attached to it for its own sake, and you're addicted to life. Well, all life, both here and there, do I renounce. Who said that? Swami Vivekananda in his Song of the Sannyasa. All life, both here and there, do I renounce. So he's not going to get fooled by this show or this play called life, especially many lives. One on the end, feeding off of the karma and the problem of attachment to the ancestors and so forth. Buddha came to strike that out. You can get beyond your ancestors. You don't need to follow them in every way because they're deluded. They're living under the tree of samsara and eating its fruits. Right? So, to repeat that, the world as the tree, the seed of this tree is tamas, the idea of the self of the body is its twig, is its root, attachment is its twig, and actions are its soil and water. The pranic life forces are its trunk. And those are all, of course, listed there on the image. Also, he says about it, the different senses are the various branches. So that means the 10 senses. You have, in this tradition, you have actually 10 senses because you have 5 inner senses, 2 in dream tonight. And that's all part of the tree of samsara. You're going into your dream, you're seeing things in dream, you're hearing things in dream. You just have abandoned your gross senses and you've equipped yourself with subtle senses now, that's all. You're in dream number 1, now you're in dream number 2. That's what Ramana Maharshi used to say. I think going to dream is some great revelation or something. It's not until you can realize you're the dreamer. As long as you experience the dream, then you don't know yourself yet. But if you can find yourself as the root of the dream, the source of the dream, then you can wake up. Maybe some of you have even done that. Oh, this dream is stupid. I think I'm going to wake up now. And you do. You got a little bit of a hold of your own self there, and some resolve around waking up. So And in other words, so these 10 senses are unique teaching for Westerners who only think they have 5 senses. If you know you have 5 other senses inside, then you know that there's another world. There's not just this world, there's another world. And there's not just gross objects, there's subtle objects. And then when you start studying yoga, Patanjali says, meditate on the gross objects and rid yourself of them. Then meditate on the subtle objects in your mind and rid yourselves of them. Pretty soon you can get beyond the vrittis, the vibrations. And the teacher used to say that, it says, oh, you have the Annamaya kosha, the body, and I have the Pranamaya kosha, and I have the Vijnanamaya kosha, I have the Manamaya kosha, I have the Anandamaya kosha, I have ego and mind and thoughts and bodies, and I'm vibrating all over, he says. Now I'm vibrating all over. A bad move, you see. Brahman is without vibration. So what are you doing apart from Brahman? Vibrating over there somewhere, in some world that's vibrating. And it's vibrating with tamas as well, inertia, and suffering and so forth. And enjoyment, which is banal. Somebody went up to Vivekananda once and started talking about heaven. He said, you don't talk to Vedantas about heaven, that's a banal subject. It's glib. We don't think in terms of heaven, we think in terms of transcending heaven. Heaven is where you go and dream, if you want to put it that way. At least get into deep sleep and go formless. You see your true nature. That's what the enlightened have done. That's why they're enlightened, because they realize their formless nature. And it's why we're not, because we're still hanging out in form, thinking that we're the body and so forth. We're just living in the tree of samsara, that's all. Branches are its senses, the objects of the senses are its flowers. That's well put, you see. Everyone loves flowers, right? But what's the difference between a flower that you leave on the bush and a flower that you pick and smell and throw on the ground, or a flower you offer at the altar? You see. Holy Mother used to say, flowers are better left on the bush or offered to God. She said, it really makes me feel very unhappy when I see Hindu and English gentlemen pick flowers, sniff them, and then tread them under their boot the next minute. So, there's better use for flowers, and the same for these flowers of the sense objects. Objects should be telling you, God exists, God exists, all is God, all is God. All this is gold. So, that's what they should be telling you, but what are they telling people? I like that object, I want to own it, I want to attach to it, I want to get pleasure from it, I want to covet it over others, and so forth and so on. I want to have lots of objects, be rich. And all of that, the tree of samsara is operating. And Brahman has vacated that. Holy Mother used to say, and tonight we'll do our Durga Puja here in San Francisco, in our altar downstairs. She says that if you pay attention to the images on the altar, then God comes to them. But if a worldly person walks into the shrine room, probably by accident, then God vacates the image. That's why worldly people don't feel the presence of God in holy places. Only you do, if you have some sensitivity. Oh, I feel a great atmosphere here. The worldly people don't see that, feel that. Because God vacates whenever they come, you see. Wherever they go, they're just walking around in samsara and they're carrying this shade of darkness over them, this cloud of gloom everywhere they go. And trying to share it with you. Pain is the fruit. If the sense objects are the flowers, then pain is the fruit. And by pain they mean pain and pleasure in our tradition. Like any good religion wants to warn you away from things. And so in Christianity they'll talk about sin and hell, but they don't really believe it exists. It's just a scare tactic. So in the same, in Vedanta here, they say pain of samsara. They should also say pain and pleasure of samsara. As Krishna says in the Gita, that what you want in the beginning is what is sour in the beginning and sweet at the end, right? What you don't want is sweet in the beginning because it turns sour at the end. So all those things that you're attaching to are sweet to make your life simple and easy and lovely and all that, you should give those up. And you should start looking for things that are hard. Today is Durga Puja, so we're all having difficulties already. We almost couldn't broadcast you because the mic wouldn't work and the camera wouldn't go on, wouldn't connect to the computer, and everything was late, and we weren't even getting our food, you see. And when we had Durga's testing us, it's the first day of Durga Puja. Durga means hard to know. She is hard to know. That's why nobody knows her in any religion. Only India has her in its religion. You say, what about Mother Mary? Well, she wasn't divine. She was a woman. She was a human. In India, you have goddesses. You have the goddess herself with thousands of names. She's divine. In fact, she's the source of everything. She is the source, and this is the secret doctrine about her. That's what the Goddess Upanishads say. There are 7 of them. At the end of every one, this is the truth, this is the secret doctrine, she's the secret. There's no other religion in the world that knows about her, because they haven't worshipped her. They've left her hiding behind the scenes. Sure, you'll hear it, Fatima in Islam, and Shakina in Judaism, and Mary in Christianity. But where is she? Only in the Indian religions, including Buddhism, like Mother Tara or Pragyaparni. Did they actually bring her out and say, oh, there she is, let's worship her? Till you get down to this day and age, and who comes along? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa with Mother Kali. Kali came out of Durga's third eye. See, so these two goddesses are as one as they can be. Durga couldn't kill a certain demon she battled with for 1,000 years. So she meditated between battles and thought, I'll give birth to Kali, because every time I kill this demon, try and kill this demon, I stick it with my spear or cut its head off with my sword or whatever. I shoot arrows. Every drop of blood that falls on the ground turns into another like it. So she battled it for thousands of years, and it just kept, it's the ego she's talking about, right? It's all symbolic of the ego. It comes back in many forms. You can never kill it, no matter what you do. So what did she do? Well, she gave birth to Mother Kali. And Mother Kali has this prodigious tongue you might have seen. Sometimes you see images in India where there's one beautiful blue head of the goddess there, and out comes this river of gold. It's her tongue, just coming out of the image like that. So she gave birth to Kali, and she told Kali, now whenever I pierce this demon with my spear, or shoot it with my arrow, or cut off its head, you lap up every drop of blood with your tongue before it hits the ground. And that's how she dispatched that demon. It was called Rakta Bija. Rakta Bija. So where is that found? In the Mother Scriptures. Where are the Mother Scriptures found? Only in India. Nowhere else. There's no scripture anywhere about Divine Mother. Little mentions here and there, other countries, other ages and so forth. But there it is. The scripture is so thick you could hardly lift it. All about the Divine Mother, called the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. And then the 700 mantras called the Chandi, or Durga Saptasati. Sri Durga Saptasati, these great mantras on the Divine Mother and her wisdom, her battles with the ego. So when you come to Vedanta, particularly Ramakrishna Vedanta, if I can be allowed to use the phrase, then you'll find Mother behind everything. Swami Vivekananda was an Advaitist, he was Advaita Vedantist, but in his hymn to the Divine Mother he wrote, she who since birth has ever led me on through paths of trouble to perfection's goal. Mother-wise in her own sweet and playful ways. She who has always illumined my understanding. She the Mother, she, my all, is my resort. is my refuge, whether my work overflows with full fruition or with none. It doesn't matter what happens, whether his work is in the world is successful or unsuccessful, it doesn't matter, she's my resort. So, she, as the song relates here, you hold in your hands the holy japa beads, by which you save the devotees from the ocean of relative existence. Right? You sang, Haste Dharani Japamala, Samsara Sagara, Tari Nima. Tara means compassionate Savior. So, in every scripture, in every song, so forth, and in every tradition in India, you'll find Divine Mother. You can't look at Ram without seeing Sita. You can't look at Krishna without seeing Radha. You can't think of King Himalaya without seeing Uma, the daughter of the snow mountains. The Divine Mother's manifestations are everywhere. And she'll save you from this predicament you find yourself in, where you're attached to the sense objects as flowers and the fruits of the tree of samskara with their pain and pleasure. And the human soul is the bird that lives on this tree and eats the fruits of suffering born of multifarious activities. So you want to complement your life of activities with inactivity. That's called meditation. Every day you must meditate. Every day you must experience your formless nature. And you can't give it up even for one day. And let samsara fill in, start filling in with Maya, filling in all the gaps in your waking and sleeping consciousness, till there's no room for God anymore, till you don't even believe in God anymore. Does it sound familiar? And I'm not talking just atheistically, I'm talking about religions that have completely forgotten God and are misrepresenting God. God, in our language, Brahman, or Allah, or Buddha nature, however you want to put it. That's really this chart in a nutshell, and except for the final quote down here by Shankaracharya, he says, neither by weapons, by scriptures, by fire, water, by millions of different kinds of works can this tree be hewn down, but only by discrimination leading to the knowledge of the self. Viveka. I'll have a chart on that soon. I find me thinking, I need a chart on Viveka because we talk about it so much, so I'll put together a chart for that for you to see. That chart, in association with chapter 6, sloka 6 of chapter 6. So that's 6.6, in which it is said, knowing him who is the origin and dissolution of the universe, the source of all virtue, the destroyer of all sins, the master of all good qualities, the immortal one, the abode of the universe, as seated in one's own self, he is perceived as different from and transcending the tree of samsara, as well as time and space. So you have to go beyond your intellectual frame of reference to source that. Einstein couldn't source it. He came close as a believer in God, of course. But scientists are still caught in the physics of it all. So they have to look deep within and transcend the atomic particle and get to the Atmic particle, the intelligent particle. There are finer particles inside of you, and they vibrate much more subtly than the atomic particle does. Pranic particles, mind particles, intelligent particles, jnana matras they're called in the scriptures of India. Particles of intelligence, if they get congealed, turn into objects. And when they uncongeal, the objects go away, just like waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. The mind has all that ability to project, withdraw, and create. Didn't it just say that? Knowing him who is the origin and dissolution of the entire universe. So that's this great mind, or Mahat, they call it, Mahat, great mind, Lord Brahma. We always sing about him almost in every class when we say, or projector, you would say. Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva is the destroyer, the dissolver. So those three powers are held there within Mother's two hands, operating, projecting, withdrawing, sustaining, withdrawing all the time in cycles. Those are cycles that the great seers wanted to get out of. They wanted to realize who was holding those cycles. That's the Mother herself. That's one of the great secrets and the great ideals and truths that Sri Ramakrishna has brought to us in this age in the form of Mother Kali. She has awakened Mother Kali from the cremation grounds of India. There's one song that sings that. Sri Ramakrishna has come, the great avatar, Maitri avatar, avatar of Mother. And now he's busy awakening consciousness, awakening Mother, Divine Mother from the cremation grounds of India, where she breathes that mantra into the souls so they can move from one plane of existence to another. You get a mantra so you can transcend and move through these kings of heaven into deeper levels. Let's go on to 7. May we realize him, the transcendent, the adorable master of the universe, who is the supreme Lord over all lords, the supreme God above all gods, and the supreme ruler over all rulers. Nicely put. Some of you are memorizing that beautiful Rig Veda statement. Om Indram Mitram Varunamagni Matarato Divyaha Sasuparno Garutman. You see, that's all these great beings. Garutman's the winged carrier of consciousness. And Indram and Mitram are the Indra is the god of all gods. So Mitram is the friend of all beings. And Yama is the devourer of death. So we've got all these great names for divine reality in one line like that. And then you think about them, you see they all have one source. See. Let's go on. We're making headway. Sloka 8. He has nothing to achieve for himself, nor has he any organ of action. No one is seen equal or superior to him. His great power alone is described in the Vedas to be of various kinds, and his knowledge, strength, and action are described as inherent in him. So, I don't know how many of you were watching the live streaming class from Hawaii, weekend before last, was it? Or last, yeah, weekend before last, when we showed the Brahma Chakra, that this is what this verse reminds me of. Since we went through it in that class, and you can look back on it, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I would like to read you the sloka that indicates what great power he has. Brahma Chakra. A chakra is like a wheel. And it's also sometimes a hub of a wheel, like a chakra in the center in your chakras and so forth. So listen to this. I'll just read it, and we won't have to stop and study it, but you can see when God gets into form what kind of power he has. And you should notice that it's not all good. It's mixed. There's some very dangerous, risky things in relativity you might have noticed that you have to keep yourself free of and beware of. Stick to the straight and narrow, as they say. But this is how Shvetashvatara puts it earlier in the first chapter of this, if you remember. When we studied that sloka, I created this chart for you. It took me days to envision it and put it into a form like this. But this is how it reads. Some deluded thinkers speak of nature, others of time, as the force that revolves the great wheel of life. But all of this is just the glory of God manifested in the world. So long as the jiva, that's embodied soul, imagines separation from Brahman, thinks itself to be other than God, when it's really one with God, so long does it continue to spin on the cosmic wheel, like the tree of samsara, enjoying and suffering experiences there. It gains freedom when it realizes its oneness with Brahman. So, next sloka. We think of Brahman, that is the rishis, these great souls who pondered Brahman for hundreds of years in family lines. We think of Brahman as a great wheel, a grand wheel, whose every revolution gives rises to two. Every time that wheel goes around, you've got another duality to deal with. With one felly, that's nature or Maya. Triple tires, that's Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas, the three gunas. It rolls along on three tires. That is inertia, frenetic activity, and balance. It's always going through these three, including your mind is always going through those three. It has 16 extremities. That is mind, manas, 5 gyanendriyas, those are the actions of knowledge, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling. 5 karmendriyas, procreation, walking, excreting your waste, and so forth. Those are the karmendriyas. And 5 mahabhutas, you know what those are?
Earth, air, fire, water, ether.
Yeah, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. You take it in some sort of order. Or you could go ether, air, fire, water, earth. Because they come out of you in that order. Ether first, air next, fire, then water, and then earth. They come out of you. And all of this world has come out of your mind. So the 5 mahabhutas are the last thing to come out. It's the physical universe. So you've projected them from your mind with thousands of other souls involved, and so they've come out in that order. That's one of the quintuplications. And 50 spokes, that is, besides these 16 extremities, it has 50 spokes, 5 viparyayas, 28 ashaktis, 9 tushtis, and 8 siddhis. The 8 siddhis are those occult powers that I have a chart on to show you. That is, these are fallacies, disabilities, contentments, and occult powers. The nature of Maya is that you have these malcontentments, discontentments, but you also have these contentments, and both trap you. People are always discontent or malcontent, right? They want to get something. They get it, and they're still malcontent, right? Or they get some pleasure, and they just become fat and lazy, so they don't do anything anymore. They get rich and don't work anymore, and so forth. As if that's the meaning of life and the end all of the all of existence. So Maya is such that it's throwing out these revolutions, right? With every revolution of that felly, Maya, or every revolution of the Brahma Chakra, these twos are being thrown at souls. And then they're getting themselves flummoxed by these twos. They're becoming averse to one and attached to the other. But attachment and aversion, Father of Yoga, it says, is one of the main dualities. Avidya, ahamkara, and then raga, dvesha, attachment and aversion, and then clinging to life, fear of death. Those are the 5. I'm sorry, asmita was what I forgot. So the avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and clinging to life for fear of death. So those are, as far as the Father of Yoga is concerned, those are the major dualities, and all the other dualities kind of come out of that. So attachment and aversion would be one of the, at the root of most of people's problems in Maya or with the tree of samsara. So I'm bringing that out. Contentments and discontentments both are there. That is, you might say, people say, well, Divine Mother is giving me everything here in this world. It's great, isn't it? But then when you become bored with those things, or they get stolen, or they get destroyed, or they don't work anymore, then you're going to go blame Mother for giving them to you? You wanted these things. So you produced them with your own mind. And she allowed it. See, but she winked at you and said, when you get tired of them, don't forget me. There's a song that says that. You can go down into relativity there, this whole collection of minds that you want to get yourself enmeshed in, immured in, but make sure you remember me. You know, when you get tired of that. Swamiji said this world is a great gymnasium. Flex your muscles and get out. It's not to be, it's for birds and foxes, not for you. Who said that? Jesus. Jesus. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. But you have no place to lay your head here. Is there anything unclear about that statement of his? And are you a Christian? Do you love Jesus? Then why are you clinging to a place that's only fit for foxes and birds? And forgetting your divine nature and your home, which is divine resort, which is Shiva's own heart. I can't really read something straight through without giving commentary. It's needed, you see. This Brahma chakra is driven along 3 different roads. That's Jnanam, Dharma, and Adharma. So wisdom road, if you take the wisdom road, you pretty much get off this Brahma chakra pretty quick. But Dharma and Adharma, you're going to have to steer clear of Adharma because that's unrighteous living, unrighteous thought. Selfishness, greed, violence, that's Adharma. But Dharma will help you. This Dharma and Jnanam are what you're learning right now. India is sharing its Jnanam, its Atma Jnana with you, and its Dharma. And that's in order for you to realize your Swadharma, your highest destiny, if you want to put it that way. Not a great word in Sanskrit, but your highest destiny would be that Swadharma. That's to get realized in one lifetime, by the way. And don't mess around with these. So these 3 different roads is where this car, this automobile, you might say, of this whole universe is rolling along all the time. There's hundreds and thousands of souls going to Adharma at the end of every life. Hundreds and thousands of souls going into darkness. That is, they don't know anything until they wake up upside down in another body. Like the chickens in India, just on the bicycles, they hang them upside down, drive down the roads, just hang upside down. Stupid things. See? On the way to the restaurant. They've seen them behind there killing their chickens. Getting ready to feed the masses. See? So, you don't want that. So you want to wake up in this lifetime and be right side up. For any lifetime you are to take, if you are to take any more, you should be right side up for it. That's Dharma. Not upside down. It has 20 counter spokes. Well, if it weren't enough that it had 50 spokes, it has 20 counter spokes. Support pegs are wedges in this machine. The dasindriyas and that is the 10 senses and their 10 sense objects. We talked about that just a little while ago. And it ends with 6 sets of 8. I kind of wish it were 5. It would fit into my quintuplication. But 6 sets of 8. That's 48 things here. What are they? Well, to divide them eightfold first, or sixfold first, there's the eightfold nature, 8 body ingredients, 8 psychic powers, 8 mental states, 8 superhuman beings, and 8 virtues of the soul. If you want them listed, ether, air, fire, water, earth, mind, intellect, and ego is the eightfold nature. Krishna says that in the Gita. My nature is eightfold. It's the 5 elements in the mind. That's his lower nature. He calls it his lower nature. Mind, ego, intellect, and the 5 elements. Then 8 body ingredients. External skin, internal skin, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen. Then 8 psychic powers. These are the occult powers. Invisibility, weightlessness, expansiveness, satisfaction, glorification, domination over others, attraction, and enjoyment. Those are the preoccupation of most Western people. And might as well just throw the whole world in there right now. They're all getting westernized, so they're all attached to the 8 occult powers. And Krishna says, if you're even attached to one of the 8 occult powers, you'll never get enlightenment. And Ramakrishna said recently, the 8 occult powers are like crow droppings by the side of the road. Nobody in the right mind would want them or court them. But there we are, dominating over the natures. There we are, beautifying ourselves with makeup to make ourselves look good to someone else when inside we're a mess. Here, won't you like me if I paint myself up? Here, won't you marry me now? Then you marry the guy or you marry the woman and you find out that they're an absolute mess inside. They cheated you. They didn't show you your true self. That's called glorification, mahima. Making something look like other than it is. See, and it's deceit, it's deception. I know monks and nuns who told me that. So I got tired of the deceptions of human beings. They weren't telling me who they really were and who they really are. They weren't showing me their true self, so I gave them up. I gave up people, relationships and all that. So these occult powers bear looking into, and sometime today or tomorrow we will have a chart that shows you those against the rain cloud of virtues. When you give up those 8 occult powers, you get the rain cloud of virtues. Father Yoga says, and Vivekananda quoted that statement of Dhanjali quite a bit. He liked that. Now there's the 8 mental states. Righteousness, unrighteousness, knowledge, ignorance, renunciation, attachment, divine powers, and lack of powers. So there are divine powers, Aishvarya, that are different than the occult powers. I have a chart on that actually, that shows you the 8 occult powers across from the divine powers of God. Those should be quoted. You'll find there things like contentment, and, compassion, selflessness, and things like that. Now the 8 superhuman beings, Brahma, Prajapati, the Devas and Devis, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the Pitris, and the Pishachas. So these are, of course, old names for the gods and goddesses, but Brahma is there. We just sang to him, the projector, the great mind, called him. And Prajapati is the teacher of the gods. He's a human being who got so high as a human that he could actually teach the gods spiritual truths. He starts out some of our mantras too, like Om Indram Vitram and so forth. These beings are considered superhuman beings or divine beings, and they're within you. They're all within you. They're not somewhere out there. They came into the star-strewn path. You see, listening to that song last night, some of us here. They came along the star-strewn path to help the ark of the world, which is suffering and lust and greed. So basically it means Swamiji and Sri Ramakrishna got together as souls and came down. And when they came, that means come out. So when they came out of there, Atman took a form. They went through 5 realms. And that last realm was called the star-strewn path, the Buddhakasha. So it's not like you're coming down out of space and seeing stars, right? Because there's just more stars above you. You can't come down that path. It's everywhere. So you're coming out from a realm that had no stars and no suns and no moons. It just had the light of Atman and so forth. So when you're coming out like that, you have to hit another level of vibration, then you'll see the physical universe before you. And that's a spiritual view of things, it's not a scientific view of things. There are other akashas or heavens within you that you will come out from. And it's rather like coming out of deep sleep and dream. That's how we can equate it and understand it, is that when we go into deep sleep and dream, we're actually penetrating these other worlds, so we're giving up the atomic particle. And our vibration's coming subtler and subtler. They've even measured that. Like Sixon and I, we had to go and be measured in New York when we were young. So they put probes on our mind and they wanted us to meditate. See. They wanted to see how, and sleep, sometimes they do sleep study. Some person has to go and stay overnight at hospitals. They study their sleep. They can measure it. So it just rather proves a much deeper level of dharmas you want to look into. If you want to study your own consciousness. What does an Eskimo do? Study snow conditions. If he doesn't study snow conditions, he could die the next day. You've got to know everything about them, how fluffy it is, if it's iced over, when the winds are blowing it, what color it is. You just go everything about snow conditions. So the Zen Buddhists say, you should be like that with your consciousness. You have to know everything about your consciousness. You have to study your consciousness like an Eskimo would study snow conditions. Nobody does that. They just take consciousness for granted. Objects, pleasures, food, it's all just taken for granted, you see. To study your consciousness is to become aware, is to become conscious, is to be mindful. However way you want to put it nowadays, is to witness your own existence. My teacher used to say, the body is a symbol for existence. Your body is a symbol of existence. Your mind is a symbol of consciousness. But your Atman symbolizes awareness, pure conscious awareness. So you must locate yourself with your Atman and then see the mind and then see the body as they start coming down the star-strewn path. Right? There'll be no stars in the Atman. There'll be no worlds in the Atman. There'll be no other people in the Atman. That's all a part of the tree of samsara. It's all a part of the Brahma chakra. So you better see the basis out from which all of this revolves. We call her Divine Mother now. Here on Durga Puja, first day, Navaratri. The final 8, and then we'll take a break. Virtues of the soul. Virtues are compassion, forbearance, lack of jealousy, purity, non-fatigue, freedom from poverty, and desirelessness. They call these virtues of the soul. If you have those and you're on such a merry-go-round ride like this, then you'll probably get off it at the end all right without heaving your lunch. You don't eat a lot of popcorn and hot dogs and get on one of these merry-go-rounds. So it means you don't want to come into the Brahma Chakra wheel with a lot of karmic baggage. It's going to make you sick at the end, or all the way up to the end of your lifetime. So, we have almost reached that. Let's just make sure we know where we are before we break. That was a chart that we wanted to put together with Sloka 8, right? Which says, he has nothing to achieve for himself, nor has he any organ of action, nor is there seen any equal or superior to him. His great power alone is described in the Vedas. Shvetashvatara did a good job in his Upanishad, which is in the Veda, of explaining that. And his powers of various kinds, his knowledge, strength, and action are described as inherent in him. Of course, they're using him with a capital H here, and that designates beyond him and her. That is it. You might say that. And that's why they use the word taught or that, to show that it's also beyond gender. So this is what comes out, and this is also what comes further out. And this you can find some grounds for life in. See, maybe you have dharmic life for sure, because Jnana and Dharma are listed. But you can't really find much here. But it's like cotton candy for lunch. There's really nothing there you're going to want that's not going to be suffering prone or suffering causing. So I'll leave these 2 charts up for you to look at. We'll take a break, and the live streaming audience, hope you can hear us well because we're using the room mic, can watch these charts also on their screen while they go get some popcorn. All right. welcome back, or as my Hindu travel agent says, welcome. Welcome. So we have returned to a class on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. We have wended our way and worked our way to chapter 6, the final chapter, and we're now taking up sloka 9. Actually, the version here by revered Swami Jagishananda doesn't have the verses numbered, so I penned in the numbers myself, so I could keep track of that while I'm trying to share this with you. Anyway, we did 8 just now, and we looked at the Brahma Chakra, and I've switched the charts here now to reflect slokas 9, 10, and 11. In sloka 9, as we come towards the end of this whole Upanishad, it says, "No one in the world is his master, nor has anyone any control over him." Again, him with a capital H, designating beyond gender. "There is no sign by which he can be inferred." I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but I understand how it's in what context he's using it. "He is the cause of all and the ruler of individual souls. He has no parent, nor is there anyone who is his Lord." He's the Lord of all gods, as we said. And let's move on. That's self-evident. In sloka 10, "May the Supreme Being, who spontaneously covers himself with the products of nature, just as a spider does with threads drawn from its own navel, grant us absorption in Brahman." Beautiful prayer. O Lord, O Divine Mother, who covers herself with Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva like threads from a spider. The Upanishads have used that analogy quite often, and here it comes to handy because the chart looks rather like a spider web, doesn't it? I didn't really intend it as that, but as I started putting it together, it came out. This is teaching of Lord Vishishta from Yoga Vishishta scripture, very profound Nando scripture of its own. And I've created some 20 charts from that scripture, and this is one of them, number 3. YV3, I call it. And you see there, just as the Rishi is saying, that this spider web can, in samsaric fashion, can begin to hem you in so that you can't move. The spider spins its web, can also drop back inside itself, and can gad about on the web without getting stuck. But not so those other creatures who venture into the web. So there's double and triple meaning in that kind of teaching. But we start here with mind in bondage. Let me show it to you because it also is a quick study. Right there at the center of that web, mind in bondage. That is, any mind that came in, took a body, and did so out of ignorance. Because, well, there's another chart I could show about the palette of consciousness, where I put a lot of different blank painting palettes, you see, not palette, I guess, canvases. See? And then a palette of colors, and then we basically wrote on each canvas what the illumined soul is looking for when he takes his next body. So we have to start thinking in those terms. Working on ourselves now to free ourselves of karmas and samskaras and limitations, to have the experience of Brahman, which is our own nature in this lifetime, in this very life, in this very body. And then start also thinking into the future about future lives, because you can take other bodies if you do it in knowledge, in wisdom, and they won't be binding for you. You will be serving God and mankind, as we say in Vedanta. And that's a very high and very needed in this world ideal to hold. So with that as a kind of preamble to this, there you see mind in bondage, and this is all from a story about Manas. He's named Manas. And Lord Brahma, the projector, this great god, Mahat they call him, Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, sometimes they call him, has taken his son, Vashishta, who has written the scripture out of which these teachings come, to this world where Manas is always suffering. He's being born again and again. And what Brahma wants to show is mind-born son. That's an interesting phrase, by the way, mind-born, not flesh-born. So these are kings of heaven within you, in which beings get born from their fathers and mothers through mind power, through wisdom. They're born of wisdom, they're not born of flesh, until they maybe take flesh. So beautiful phrases like that you find even in English in our Vedantic form. So he takes his mind-born son to another world because he wants, Lord Brahma wants to show his Lord Vashishta this process of reincarnation and how people fall into it and can't get out of it. So Manas is his soul that keeps coming out of a well and then going through this process, which we'll take you through real quick, and then falling back into the well at the end of the lifetime. He does this over and over and over again. But he's experiencing that, and that's a story you can read. One of the beautiful things about Vashishta's yoga is that it's all made of stories. And Lord Vashishta himself is now counseling Sri Ram, the young avatar when he was in his teens, before anyone even knew he was an avatar. I think only 12 souls on the planet who were rishis living in the forests and so forth knew that God had been born on earth as Ramchandra. He was the earliest of avatars. We can't think of an avatar earlier than Ram, way before Krishna even. So, and it's still got millions of followers in the world. I'm one of them, if you see a soul like that. But then he's getting his teachings from this hoary old sage, Lord Vashishta, and that's the backdrop for this. You have to read Lord Vashishta to get some of these stories for yourself. I've done my own translation of them to make them easy for you to access. Now, here's what happens to mind in bondage. It's an impure mind. The Ashuddha is the Ashuddha Manas. And he wants to become pure. But on the way to becoming pure, Shuddha Chaitanya, then it's Shuddha, it's mixed. So all of these samskaras and karmas in this mind, are precisely why you want to sit every day and empty your contents of your mind. At the end of each workday, you want to sit for a half hour and empty everything that happened to you. Good, bad, mixed, indifferent, people, insults, compliments, empty it out, see. And start fresh the next day. And if you can make that a practice, it's like a dissolving a mind stream meditation, then you don't accrue any karma and you don't get caught off guard and you don't get off your path. And you're trained to see that all of this is just a projection, that it has no abiding substance in it. It's empty. Buddhists call that shunyata, empty of substance. And only your Buddha nature, or Tathagata they call it, or pragyaparam, like Buddha used that term, supreme intelligence, that's real and abiding. But all the things that happen are not happening in your soul, they're happening in nature. That's one of Krishna's teachings. Nothing ever happens in your soul. All activities taking place in nature. And nature came out of you. You might say the one act that you did was to unleash nature, see, and then get into it. But everything that happens inside of nature, nothing happens inside your soul. You're always the witness, whether it seems like it or not. So if you get pulled into thinking you're the actor, well, that's the problem. People say, Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't act, I don't do anything, Mother does it all. So that's what he's trying to say when he's saying that to you. But other beings think that they're the doer, they think they're the actor, they think they're the agent. And any time that means they're identifying with the work and they're taking praise for it and blame for it. And that's a two-way street, that's another duality, praise and blame. Or, you know what I'm thinking right now?
No
Praise or blame can be, where praise or praised and blame or blamed are one. So that's another line out of the Song of the Sannyasin. So heed then no more how body lives and goes. Its task is done, let karma float it away. And not the body, we've already said that. So You don't identify with the body, so the body is engaged in actions, the mind is engaged in thought actions, but the soul is never engaged in any kind of action whatsoever. So you want to shift to that perspective. I am free of action. Brahman does not act, so I will not act. And that's pretty much the credo of a meditator. I will now not act, I will not vibrate. And I'll be able to do this inside of seconds. In fact, when I get up from my meditation in an hour, I won't act when I act either. I just walk through the world in meditation. So when I come back to my seat tomorrow morning and sit, that will be just like picking up where I left off in formless meditation. And it's another way of training yourself about the unreality of the world, that birds have nests and foxes have holes, or that everything's empty. Buddha, Christ, Krishna, Vivekananda, all these beings we mentioned, these are knowers of Brahman, knowers of God Almighty, knowers of Buddha nature. And they're trying to share how they came to be such and what happens to a Jiva Mukta. A Jiva Mukta is a living liberated soul, so this soul is a past master. In another lifetime got free, and now is bringing this freedom into this life and sharing it with you. Well, this is how it's done, my son, my daughter. This is how it's done. So this impure mind projects a world of dire illusion and dwells in it. So Manas crawls out of the well, and this is his next lifetime. It's all his doing. He can't blame devil, he can't blame God. It's all his doing. He probably doesn't know this yet. And he's operating under the mantra, why me? You know, I've put that in the past, right? The ignorant person says, why me? The seeking person says, who am I? The enlightened soul says,
I am that.
I am. So these are three very different echelons of spiritual evolution, you might say, or progress. Why me? Why me? They're always saying. So Oneness is in the why me level. He goes and moves restlessly and bleeds amidst the sharp brambles and thorns of sense objects. He's getting cut up by the sense objects, happy sometimes in pleasure gardens, and then getting caught in thickets the other time. O Lord, my Guru, you are the burner of the thicket of worldly life. There's a song that says that, how your Guru burns away the thickets of worldly life for you. Then Manas subjected himself to endless pains via self-inflicted whips of unfulfilling desire, making the matter worse, called exacerbation. Then he digs a well of darkness and frequents it in abject misery. He can't get any satisfaction, so he falls into abject Thomas. So he's in Mr. Thomas's neighborhood. And he's going to somehow find his way to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Rogers. And then Mr. Sattva's neighborhood, or Mrs. Sattva's neighborhood. Then he seeks release from ignorance and takes refuge in pleasure. So that's the predicament of the worldly person. They get so much suffering, so much pain, so depressed that they're looking for pleasure, and they might go to drugs, or they might go to other things and to try and get that pleasure, alcohol and so forth. This is where it all gets very Mayic, very dense and dark, as if it wasn't bad enough, as they say. Then he projects a pleasure garden, but soon tires of all that and falls into fatigue and remorse. In other words, he saps his vital energy, his senses of their vital energy. Which is what you do when you eat too much, sleep too much, your senses get sapped of their vital energy. You age before your time, you get out of shape physically, and you can't think right, your senses don't work. And this is all just sapping the vital energy of prana, which should be flowing all the time through well into your old age. Should be able to sit, breathe, think, not think. All those things are open to you. Not just think, stop there. Not think too. Turn off the vibrations. That's what I was talking to you at the break. Be a master of your own condition. If two hurricanes come on either side of you, which just happened to me in Hawaii, and it cuts out all your power, and it cuts off your computers, and it cuts off your lights, and you can't even take a shower, and there's no water. you should be able to sit down and go, I myself, I've done this before. I'll turn it all off. I don't need it. I don't even need a candle. Or if I want to read a scripture, I'll light a candle. But basically, you should be able to be totally content, satisfied with just yourself, not with anything else. Children, wife, friends, books, foods, water, shower. Be able just to sit there and go, fine. This is the situation I'm in now, and I will act accordingly as Atman. But that's not what Manas is able to do yet. So he goes into mind and bondage. He gets reborn in ignorance. Now, Lord Brahma and Lord Vashishta watched. And Vashishta was saying, I don't want to see this anymore. Lord Brahma said, no, I brought you here for a purpose. I want you to watch this process. So he went around several lifetimes. He kept calling out of this well. At the end, he'd cry abjectly, toss himself back into the well called death, and he'd come back out again. He did this a lot. And Lord Brahma and Vashishta even went up to him and stopped him during one lifetime and said, we are your teachers, we're here to help you. And Manas wouldn't listen to them. Now, this happens a lot with gurus and disciples. Either the guru is not right or the disciple is insincere, whatever the case may be, or both. You got to find that special relationship between guru and shishya that's ideal. And that's the highest relationship in the world. It's also the rarest. And when you find that, then you know your path is set on the right time. But most people, your foot is set on the right path. But most people are not able to recognize divinity inside themselves. So we won't be able to recognize it inside a teacher or a guide or a great soul. Christ could get up on a soapbox and in a robe and with a staff and proclaim God's word to the heavens, out in the streets of some city. But would anyone stop by and listen to him? Even a Christian? They'd think he was crazy. So recognizing divinity is only given to like a jeweler. The jeweler knows what a diamond's worth, not an eggplant seller or a businessman or a politician. They don't know what a diamond is worth. So in that regard, they kept stopping Manas and saying, you've got to stop this, you're hurting yourself. Don't go into that thicket of brambles anymore, you're hurting yourself. This doesn't make sense, but Manas wouldn't listen. And Lord Brahma is the soul of souls. He's like the firstborn. So he's going to have a lot of power to try and affect this change. Ramakrishna used to say, ignorance is more powerful than knowledge. Otherwise you would see people free out there. But you're not. You're seeing them bound and suffering and attached. So in this world, you're going to have to go against the stream and acquire Atma Jnana, this special knowledge. That was Vashishta's special teaching in that scripture, Atma Jnana. Through Atma Jnana and Atma Jnana scriptures, you will get free. That's his signature teaching. One of several main ones. So they couldn't convince Manas, in other words, he kept throwing himself in the well. So one lifetime, at the end of one lifetime, he stopped and looked at them and gave out a great laugh. And then he threw himself into the well. So Lord Brahma said, aha, here's what I wanted you to see. The turning of the soul away from pain and suffering, pain and pleasure and dualities, basically. Let's see what he comes out next life. So they waited. He comes out of the well, reborn, and he made his way around. And at this juncture, then, you see how he skipped getting reborn in ignorance, and he gains a glimpse of truth, but only at the moment of death. Well, of course, going backwards a little bit. That's what happened to him. He gains a glimpse of truth, but only at the moment of death. Then he's reborn with half-developed wisdom and seeks for guidance. When a teacher like myself, that is when I share this Dharma with all of you, sees teachings like this and puts them in a package like this, I've seen souls at almost every juncture. I've been able, after 20, 30 years, to look back and identify souls who were exactly those kinds of souls. And this one makes a lot of sense to me, that people have half-developed wisdom and seek for guidance. And I must say that in this day and age, quite a lot of them seem to be falling back into the mind in bondage. They're not making it. So this is an upward hill still. And It's only when you gain holy company and grace of a wise guru and get initiation that you're assured. You're assured a place in heaven, if you want to put it that way. It's the mantra, the teacher, and initiation into the path that purifies the body. You then won't want the body anymore. You'll have a pure mind and a pure body. And you can go amongst holy company. Any kind of group you can go into and you'll be accepted. Whereas before initiation, it's like a cow trying to get into a herd of horses, Krishna said. They'll drive it away. So the worldly don't like the spiritual, and the spiritual don't like the worldly. Those two don't mix, you see, so they drive each other away from their vibration. So when you get that triple gem, basically, what they're talking about here, and they talk about it in Buddhism and other places, then you've opened the path for you, and you're probably not going to fall back into suffering again, into any kind of well of bondage. And samsaric cycles come to an end. Basically, sometimes we sing about that in beautiful hymns that you will recognize, because we've taken this one apart before. When Shankara, who has given us many of these kinds of teachings, sings in his Babaji Govindam this. Kate kanta kaste putra samsaro yamadiva vichitra ashyatvam kaha puta yastas satvam chintaya tadiya prakta Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Bhutavate Samprakte samihite kare Nahi nahi akshakti tuprem karane Bhaja Govindam. Adore the Lord, adore the Lord, adore the Lord, you
Fool.
you fool. When the time of death comes, what will all of this Maya, this samsara, this grammatical rules and regulations and things, what will that do to the time of death? So when scientists, my teacher said, I was talking to a scientist, Swami Shishananda, this old Hindu monk, right? He had a scientist with him. The scientist said, Swami, look at that car there. If we could leash all the power from that car, we could blow up 2/3 of the world. All the atomic power in every atom in that car, for instance. Swamiji looked at him and said, what good would that do you? It's just kind of a no-brainer, right? It's the way these people think. You know, they want to unleash power for destruction. But Swami Shishananda used to say that Sri Ramakrishna came and unleashed the power for highest good. He didn't split the atom, he split the curtain of Maya for you, so you could see through it and realize and store up this highest power for the highest and best good, you and other beings. That highest power is called, we're worshipping her,
Shakti.
Shakti, yes. And Durga Puja. That's Shakti power, that's not atomic power. So, this is what I think of in samsara. In fact, I didn't really read you that verse, which is verse Kate Kanta Kate Putra 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here talks about samsara, doesn't it? Through this company of the good arises. No, this one. Who is your wife? Who is your son?
No.
Exceedingly wonderful is this empirical process. Who are you and whence have you come from? Oh, brothers and sisters, think about that truth here in this life. So the word samsara there is translated as empirical process. That's one the Vedantists have taken the word samsara and Maya and they've termed it in English empirical process. This onward going world of world cycles and things that people wrap their whole lives up in and think that's the only reality, and they go to death thinking that. So Oneness has kind of transcended that, you see, and he's come around here to end of samsaric cycles, and he begins to master his desires, breaks his attachments, and attains jnana. according to Vishishta, I mean, other teachers like Bhakti and some like meditation, but Vishishta likes Jnana. It's through knowledge you'll get rid of ignorance. It's really the only way you're sure to get rid of ignorance is through knowledge. It's the greatest purifier in the world, he says. So you can see how half-developed wisdom might have taken you on a better trajectory. You're beginning to live, as Aurobindo used to say, lives of better and better, more light, but you're still being born without the truth. When you finally reach this trajectory, and especially when you get this initiation, and then you begin to work on having this wisdom as your own, or I would say regaining it. It's always been in you, but now you know that it's within you and you can access it. That's the rain cloud of virtues, as opposed to the occult powers. So the rain cloud of virtues kicks in about there. See, when Holy Mother said, there are many kinds of desires, and this desire that's making the world go on. But you'll know that it's your last lifetime when you satisfy your final desire. That is your last lifetime. You can be sure of that. So I see people who have been born free. They're not lions, but they're lions of Vedanta, some of them. And they've been born free, so they've snapped the chains of rebirth. And O snapper of this world's bonds. There's a great song about Sri Krishna that Swamiji wrote. Kandava Baba Bandhana. Then where else to go? You attain the incomparable state of Parabrahma, the supreme Brahman, and that's pure mind. And you break the web of Maya. So I left this part of the web broken. The spider could not get at you there. You become the spider itself. You can gad about on the web and you never get caught in it. Until such a time as when you won't want to even take a form anymore. You'll just stay as the formless essence that you are, in essence. Pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness, moksha, mukti, kaivalya, sampragata, nirvana, nirvikalpa, fana in Muslim tradition, beatific vision in Christianity, whatever you want to go with words for it, you'll find them. And thousands of souls who have attained that state. But many, many, many more thousands have not. They're still rotating in this wheel of samsara. It's a powerful teaching in both in India and Vedanta and Buddhism. Let's see if you can recognize this next sloka. He is the eternal among non-eternal things. He is the intelligence among all that who are intelligent. Though one, he grants the desires of the many. One is released from all fetters on realizing him, the cause of all, who is comprehensible through philosophy and religious discipline. What's the Sanskrit for that? Om
Nicho,
Nicho
Nichanam, Chetanas, Chetananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kama,
Tamatmastam Yena Pashanti Diraha
Tesham Shanti Shashvati Netaresham.
He is the Nicho Nichanam. He is the eternal among non-eternal things. Chetanas Chetananam. He is the intelligence of the most intelligent ones. Chetana. Of our beautiful Swamis of the Ramakrishna Order living today and putting out such wonderful books as Swami Chaitanya and St. Louis. And so that Chaitanya word is a very precious word in Sanskrit. And he, although fulfills the desires of the many, is always one. So that's kind of back to the Brahma Chakra. If you have desires to be filled, the Brahma Chakra is probably where Mother will send you, as it were, you see. And you'll find out your lessons there. Your contentments, your malcontentments, your brambles, your pleasure gardens, whatever you want to say, you'll experience these things, and then you'll lift yourself out of your own suffering. Oh, Master, where are you going? One of his disciples said to Lord Buddha, I'm leaving this world. Can I go with you? No. Yeah, I can tell you this, you must be a lamp unto your own self. That's Buddhist word. Be a lamp unto your own self. light your own way. That's, in the end, that's what you will do. And this is helpmates along the way. Holy company, guru, initiation. You've got to get this. With all your strength, you've got to acquire that and then put it into practice in some lifetime. Better earlier than later. Because there's always a risk of this web closing in, or this chakra getting attached to this wheel. So you want to put it into effect. Now, that takes us to another sloka. We just took 13. See, I told you we were making headway today. Started out with sloka 5 and we're already on sloka 13. That was Nicho Nicho. Now, in sloka 14, see if you can realize this. The sun, or recognize it, the sun does not shine there, neither the moon nor the stars. There these lightnings do not shine. How then does fire shine? Because he shines, everything else shines after him. By his light all shines. Recognize that too. Om Nata Suryabhati. So here's where you'll find Nicho Nichanam, Na Tatra Suryabhati, and Om Adihi Sa Samyoga Nimitta Hetu, which we started off with this morning. All in the 6th chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. That's how rich this Upanishad is. Probably more apropos to us in this day and time, because he's a more contemporary rishi. Some of the rishis were very ancient, and the language is a little bit more couched in mysticism and the ancient dialogue. But Shvetashvatara was said to be more contemporary, and so I think it makes it much more accessible to us. And you'll have to go back, which you should, and look at all of these slokas that will complete your review. Always looking back on these things that you read. There's this one, like oil and sesame seeds, butter and curd, water and underground springs, fire and wood. Even so, the self is hidden inside of you. So you have those rather famous teachings, like oil and sesame seed. Who'd ever have thunk, that there was a rich oil and sesame seed, and all the work you had to do to find it, and get a bottle of it. So make a veggie sauté with it or something. So there it is, those kinds of teachings. We could go through and pick them out. You are the red parrot with green eyes. You are the old man tottering along on the staff. You are the child sitting in the tree. And they can start calling for us really beautiful imageries and symbolic statements and filled with poetic beauty and also deep wisdom at the same time. That's in the Upanishad. So yes, the sun does not shine there, neither the moon nor the stars. There these lightnings shine not. How then this fire? Because he shines, everything shines after him. By his light all this is lighted. So those people who are talking about light, and I see light, and I meditate on light, the light of this, the light of that, they have to know that the source of all of those lights, fire, moon, stars, lightning, and this mortal fire called prana, that makes us see, hear, because the prana, when it is causing your eyes to see, is causing your ears to hear. That's not the eyes can't see by themselves. I mean, cut the optic nerve and see if you see. It'll still be open, but it won't be seen. So it had to have a nerve that some energy flowed along to make the eye see. This is how you go back inside of yourself to prove to yourself that there are subtler things than the body and the senses and the objects. And when you go to the objects, you're actually taking the prana out and fixating it on something that's not real. And it's something that's risky, that can get stolen, that can decay, that you can become bored with. So you're running a risk of prana senses outward, but the prana senses inward will take you to the psychic prana in the mind. That's where your intelligence is. And it's one more step after that you find yourself. Intelligence is the second compound, or the first compound of consciousness is intelligence. That's how Vivekananda put it. So intelligence may be a compound, it's not the ultimate thing, but it's the closest thing to Atman you can find. And so they say, he's the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, right? That gives you an idea of supreme intelligence. Who named themselves after supreme intelligence?
Buddha.
Lord Buddha. And Buddha means intelligence. And also means awakened intelligence. There's a beautiful magazine for the arm of the Ramakrishna order called Prabhupada Bharata. It's you've read wonderful articles in there by the Swamis and others. I've actually been written up in there a couple of times, a few articles. That takes us up to 14. And 15 states, the one destroyer of ignorance in the midst of this universe, he alone is the fire which is stationed in water. Realizing him alone, one overcomes death. There is no other path for emancipation. Realize Brahman is the only way to get free or emancipate. If you don't think fire can be in water, I've been diving and watched lava flow into the ocean. I have to stay away from it, but there's fire right in water there. That's how islands are getting formed. So, and that's just physically speaking. You take earth and put that into water, and take earth, water, put that into fire. Take earth, water, fire, put that into air. Earth, air, fire, water, water and air into ether. See? And then all five of those are called the five elements, and you take those and bring them back into your senses. Water goes with taste, earth goes with smell, fire goes with sight, right? Air goes with touch, and ether goes with hearing. Now you've got the first 10 of those principles that you dissolve back into each other. The efficacy of doing that is you know that one came from the other. One set of five came from this other set of five. It's not just, oh, we're doing some exercise here, and like putting water and earth together to make mud. In some laboratory studying. It's that we're finding out the origin of things. It's the whole purpose of Indian philosophy. That is the penultimate purpose, is to find the origin of things. Like tracing prana back in your senses, seed by prana, right? So there must be some energy by which man does not live by bread alone. There must be some other energy going on here that's inner. Like, no, I can get prana from food, but where's that prana's origin? Where does it come from? How do you get into food? And how through the five elements. Five elements make up food. But my senses develop that food, so you're actually feeding yourself. You don't have to thank God for food, you thank yourself for food. You made it, because you made this earth. Remember we said, all action takes place in nature, not in yourself? Well, God doesn't get involved in action, He doesn't create the world. You did that. So you have to think, give that a second thought. That ego did that. See? My teacher used to say the ego is like a guest, an unwanted, uninvited guest that comes to a party. You go up to him and you say, when are you leaving? And he says, I'll think about it. He's perfectly happy they're spoiling your party. That's the ego. No, that's what gave Anandamaya Kosha, right? Gave rise to all the other four koshas. They state that specifically in the Upanishad. That one came from the other. That's the same with these sets of fives. You look at them and you count them up, so that you see how one set of five correlates with the next, and with the next, and pretty soon you start bringing it back, and all of a sudden you start seeing yourself. First thing you see is that, oh, this is my doing. These fives are mine, and I put them into operation on this brahmachakra. And I better be careful, or I might get caught in the tree of samsara when I do it. And then when you see that, all of a sudden, that this is what's called enlightenment. It's what's called spiritual awakening. It's what's called spiritual emancipation, you just said here. destroyer of ignorance in the midst of this universe, he alone is the fire which is stationed in water. Realizing him alone, one overcomes death. There is no other path for emancipation. And we want to probably look at this. Cutting through clouds of false superimposition. This is that viveka we talk about that cuts us through. This is a new chart, no one's seen it yet. And I'll show two other new ones tomorrow in the class. They have to do with cult powers and the rain cloud of virtues, and this beautiful one, Holy Mother's teaching on time, karma, and enlightenment, which correlate with some of these slokas. But as we have still a little less than a half hour, let's see if we can make a study of this new chart. As I said, I wanted to, he says wisdom and this discrimination is the only way that will give you spiritual emancipation. You need to cut through these clouds of ignorance. That's why I actually put this up at the same time. It's called the cloud of nescience. And this is what comes down over you and veils you of your vision of Brahman, which is the light. This dark cloud inside of your mind. Sometimes they call that the cloud of unknowing, or the curtain of unknowing, or the curtain of nescience. So this, particularly in deep sleep, is there. That's why you see Brahman in deep sleep, you see the light, but you don't remember it. You don't come back with it most of the time. But you feel very good in coming out of deep sleep. So that means you were close to something very refreshing. And so deep sleep is what everyone wants. If you don't get deep sleep, then you turn into a nervous wreck. But deep sleep itself is, of course, that causal state where your causal body is there. You have a body, it's a causal body. That's what we're talking about, origins, You need to trace yourself back to other bodies that you came from. Your physical body is the gross body. It came from the subtle body, which is basically the mind. And that subtle body came from the causal body, which is your intelligence. Intelligence, in this case, is rather formless. And in the state of that formlessness, all things are in seed form. These scriptures are in seed form. This auto harp is in seed form. This building is in seed form. Cities are in seed form. Worlds are in seed form. They're words, bijams, called seeds. But if God speaks them, those worlds will effloresce. See? Everything is in the Word, right? Jesus was trying to explain that to John. The beginning was the Word, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So everything is contained in a seed form. And that's where that seed is ready to be watered. It's called deep sleep. And that's how you're going to create your next lifetime in these worlds, by watering some of those seeds. So we have to become very good seed pickers, seed choosers. And we want to water just certain ones and not the others. The illumined souls that come into the body with bliss and love and desire to serve you and so forth, they've watered just certain seeds in that causal state. They created their subtle body, and then created their physical body and mind, which was pure. Right? So they would come into existence through pure mind, through that causal body. Other beings water seeds indiscriminately, probably urged on by the force of their past lifetime, mistakes they made, attachments they bred, like why, say, cocaine babies are born. Because of that soul seeking cocaine parents, so it can get more cocaine. So any kind of addiction follows this pattern. It's not God that's doing that, it's not devil, it's the soul itself that's doing that. And this is the harsh lesson around such untenable ideas as eternal damnation. It's karma. You can turn this around. And if you, again, meet a teacher and get a mantra and start practicing, then you're on your way to turning it around. Pretty soon you'll master your desire and you'll get free. It's that simple. It's happened to thousands of souls. It happened to my teacher. He explained it to me. he helped me, and his teacher helped him, and so forth. This is just the way it goes. But if your father was a politician, his father was a politician, or a lawyer, so, see, then it's very unlikely you're going to uncover the secret of spiritual life. You're going to be caught in this round of birth and death in worldly life. On end, ad infinitum, spinning on this wheel. They say hundreds and thousands of lifetimes is not enough for most people. Because there's the Kali Yuga, and then there's the Dwapara Yuga, and then there's the Treta Yuga, and then there's the Satya Yuga. And this is 480,000 years times 2 times 4 times 8 times 60. And that's going to be a lot longer than science's 4,320 million year evolutionary cycle, you know, or 500 million year life of a physical planet called Earth. A lot longer than that is this yuga, and these yugas are unoriginated. They're not destructible, nor are they indestructible. Remember I said, matter is not indestructible, nor is it destructible. It's non-originated. That means it has no beginning, middle, and end. Why would it? Because existence doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end. You do not have a beginning, middle, and end. You are never born, and you're never going to die. You are existence, and that's birthless and deathless. That's the final conclusion of the Vedanta. Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jiva Hamsa Kalam Jagat Cha Kandarupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahma Vidya Shutayaha Pramanam. The proof, pramanam, of everything. This is state of enlightenment, which the soul sees himself and puts an end to all lives, all lifetimes. If they take a lifetime, it's going to be an illumined lifetime, then it's really not being born. They don't identify with the body, nor do they have any karma. So it's not like being born as a fetus in a mother's womb and never knowing anything from the cradle to the grave. It's not like that. They'll associate with the body, they won't identify with the body. They'll take one on and give it up, and they can do that as many times as they want. There are some souls that won't do that either. They're called Vidya-muktis. One birth, that's it. You'll never find them in form again. And in fact, Buddha said that at the end of his life. You should know that I'm awakened, and I'll have no hope for me evermore for this world. I'm gone and gone forever. So he might have set back some of his bodhisattvas, but he's not coming back. And it's very likely Jesus is that way too. Might just be waiting for a second coming that's not coming. Or you might consider maybe he's already come 4 or 5 times and you haven't seen him. Whatever the case, why should you be waiting for anyone? He came once, he gave you the truth. What part didn't you understand? Birds have nests, foxes have holes. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, take unto yourself what is the Lord's. I've not come to bring peace, I've come to bring a sword, and with it I will separate father from son, mother from daughter. You're going to go on reciting Jesus' slokas forever. And he gave you everything in that one lifetime. Why are you waiting for him to come back? And in the meantime, suffering and enjoying samsara. Get off the wheel of birth and death yourself like he did. In fact, he was never on it. And there are many others like him. Many great avatars. He's not the only one. Many people think the avatar comes once. Other people think he comes many times. But actually he's one and he comes many times. See? That's what you don't understand. Jesus and Buddha are all the same soul, Krishna. If they're at that level of realization, that's non-duality. There can be no duality, so how can you call them two, or different from one another? So they're all the same soul, but they're manifesting a little bit differently from age to age, in different bodies, even in different gender. There are plenty of women rishis who outdid the men in wisdom back in the old time. Maitri, Gargi, Lopamudra, I mean you can start listing them. Sita, Upanishad we're studying in Seattle in a couple of weeks. So all of this then should relate to you that there's a special power in these beings. And we have a word for it nowadays called Viveka, and that's why Swami took his name after it and brought the Vedanta here in 1893. Swami Vivekananda. That's a sword. So it cuts through these clouds of false improvisation. Now, in the time remaining, let's see how that looks in a great soul like that. The top quote there is by Vashishta, good because we just finished one of his teaching charts. The appearance of the world, O Ram, because remember Vashishta is teaching this teenage Ram, this young avatar. The appearance of the world, O Ram, is due to its being experienced through hundreds of births, devoid of yogic discrimination. It's like the world is going on because souls aren't getting discrimination between the real and the unreal and applying it. Therefore, the world moves on in its suffering and its agony. So you can't very well then all of a sudden say, oh, there's so much suffering in the world. Why is God so cruel to us? And, all this silly nonsense that you're speaking. As long as you don't have discrimination and cut away these clouds of ignorance in the cloud of nescience, then you can't complain about the world going on with its suffering. You yourself have got to lift yourself out of it. The discriminating soul will pass beyond mere enjoyments, then, and secure these three great attainments: the knowledge of truth, the dissolution of the mind, and the effacement of desires. So based upon that teaching, you see here, I've put the first part of this, and then, which is Vashishta's doing, and then my doing is here. I wanted to show you how Viveka is not just a word in Vedanta, which means I have to discriminate between the real and the unreal, philosophically wise, because that's basically what most people hear in Vedanta. I have to discriminate between the real or the unreal, or the essence and the non-essence, or fullness and emptiness. You have different ways of saying it. But there's a Viveka that you're going to have to apply to all areas of your life that is going to be helpful for you. But first, before getting to that, here's this triple package, this triputi that Vashishta has given us. He says the knowledge of truth, the dissolution of the mind, and the fulfillment of the effacement of desires. So those three things, he says, are very important. He's telling this young teenager this. And so that he can get beyond suffering and enjoyment and secure the truth. So how does that look with knowledge of truth? That means study of the scriptures is the means to knowledge of truth, the revealed scriptures. So that's why I just chanted Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti. The proof of the non-duality spoken of in the Vedanta is gotten through the revealed scriptures. Shruti. What has to be heard. Shruti means to hear. So there's some things in the world that you have to hear. Other things you probably shouldn't listen to. And other things you'll have to put up with. But this one you absolutely need to hear is this truth that Vashishta is telling Ram, that Vivekananda told us in 1893, and so forth. Ram is furthest back bookend in Indian history. Vivekananda is the most current bookend. And in between that are all these other great beings telling us these truths. And in this day and age, they've become obscured, a sort of a cloud of nescience over a collective mind. And they're not thinking in terms of rain cloud of virtues, they're thinking in terms of occult powers. How do I get more out of this world? How do I take it to myself? It's all about selfish grasping. So, study of scriptures is the means to the knowledge of truth. How about dissolution of mind? Practice of yoga is the means of dissolution of mind. So, you know the Atman Yoga. You become non-violent, ahimsa. You don't covet the goods of other beings, asteya. You practice celibacy and brahmacharya, or controlled senses, and you study the scriptures, and you worship God with form, Ishvara Pranidhana, and you search for purity, suchi, trying to purify yourself. And those are called the 5 yamas and the 5 niyamas. That's limbs 1 and 2. Limbs 3 is sitting, mastering your posture. Limb 3 is breathing, mastering your breath, which means taking the whole prana that causes your lungs to pump. And limb 5 is then, now you're up against the hard, rock and hard place. Most people can do those first 4, or should be able to do them. But to control the mind, to keep pratyahara, to keep it from going towards the sense objects, that's going to be the hard thing for people nowadays. So they fall off of yoga on limb 5. Which is probably why you see what's being taught out there mostly is asana and pranayama. They can't take up pratyahara because they haven't mastered it, so they can't teach it to people who may want to master it. All they can do is sit and breathe. So a yogi really begins at pratyahara. He begins to control the thoughts of his mind. Then he gets to the 6th limb, which is concentration. The game of samsara is about over when you can concentrate. It's about over. Concentration is the highest and best of all things. I mean, even better than meditation and samadhi, because you're no good for the world. You see, when you get able to get into samadhi, you're gone. Gone and gone forever. But at the level of concentration, you can accomplish anything, in any level, and in any subject, if you can concentrate. Swamiji could have become a great statesman, he was a great musician, he was a great orator. He decided, he chose to be the progenitor of the Vedanta in this day and age. He brought that to everyone, the highest truth he wanted to bring. So these beings are many-faceted and they have control. That's yoga, that's why we're saying. Practice of yoga is a means to dissolution of the mind. It means you don't have, the mind doesn't control you anymore, you control the mind. That's basically what you're saying. Because you look at most people, they're being controlled by their mind. Maybe even more likely by their senses. Animalistic people are being controlled by their senses. They're like mules with ropes being towed around to this enjoyment and that enjoyment and suffering in the interim. But being controlled by their mind then is the next step of bondage. Mind in bondage, right? So you're going to want to release yourself from that bondage, and that's going to come about by concentration. If you can concentrate, you can meditate. And if you can meditate and you hold on to meditation long enough, you'll get into samadhi. One day you will. And you'll know what this beatific vision is all about, or this Buddha nature. What about the third one there? Effacement of desires. Production of opposite impressions is the means to effacing latent impressions. That's Patanjali's yoga teaching. The chitta vrittis, right? The klista vrittis are painful vibrations in your mind. Aklista vrittis are positive vibrations in your mind. You have to quell the negative vibrations by the positive vibrations, and then stop vibrating altogether. It's not good just to be, it's not enough just to be a good person or a good animal. You have to be transcendent. You have to go beyond the intellectual frame of reference and beyond the mind to become illumined. So this is how Vishishta describes that. Now let's see how Viveka, because we only have a few minutes left, how Viveka can be applied to other areas. The ones I chose here in a small 8x11 format was Viveka at birth, Viveka in Bhakti, and Viveka in meditation. These are the ones that have kind of suggested themselves to me more. Viveka at birth means you want to have a choice where you're born, who your parents are, and even who your siblings are, and what gender you are, and what work you're going to do. These are all choices for the soul. And most people haven't chosen very well. That is, they've only chosen well if you see their life is in order and they're following a dharmic path. But they're falling into adharmic routes, or they're getting confused, or they're getting unhappy. Or, as Vishishta himself says, if you get to the end of your life and you're not peaceful, something's wrong. He puts it very nicely that way. If you've reached older age and your mind isn't under control, that is, you don't have basic peace of mind and contentment, then something went wrong along the way. So you're going to have to go back and correct. And that's never a good scenario. That's why dissolving the mind stream each day is important, so that you destroy the karmas of that day before you get into the next day. Otherwise, they're going to accumulate. Things that got by you didn't see are going to come back and bite you in the ass, as they say. The snake is going to rear its ugly head somewhere in your life because you didn't take care of it earlier on, or in another lifetime. Now, evil people, that is, people who are domineering and violent, they're very good at escaping the karma for a lifetime. So it seems like God's unjust, but you don't give that any, never mind, God doesn't have anything to do with it. They're going to pay that karma in another lifetime, no matter how adept they might be at escaping it at the time. But that's why Vivekananda said, those whose karma comes back to them right away are advanced souls. Those whose karma who takes a long time to come back to them, they're not advanced souls. They're spiritually mature. So if you do something that's not well thought, you see, some little transgression or some little white lie or whatever, it comes back to you, some karma comes back the next day and you can connect it. Oh, I see I'm getting my comeuppance there, so you connect that, you wipe it out. That's it, you see. Nothing stores up. That's karma yoga. But if you don't pay that kind of attention to the cause and effect, the effects of past actions of your past day, and don't dissolve each day, those things can begin to store up. So Viveka at birth has a lot to do about that. Your body, how healthy it is or not, if it's subject to disease, if you see well, hear well, you enjoy your food. I mean, the sense, condition of the senses, every little thing was conditioned by your past lifetime. The Buddhists say in 12 links it's conditioned. The conditioning is 12 layers deep. They're called nidanas. Beautiful chart I have on that. So that's a link you put together, a 12-link chain that you wrapped around your own neck. So you can't get free. And some of that is conditioning society, some of that is in upbringing, some of that is what I'm talking about here from your past lifetime. This much you can control. And when you can control it, you can choose better parents who will teach you the Dharma. And you choose better companions in life. You'll find your guru right away. This is very apparent to me that I see people who have been on one path their whole lifetime and people who are wandering through paths and never found it yet. So these people who have come straight to their guru and learned and just are those who are following the thread of their yoga. That's a quote from the Gita by Shri Krishna. They're following the thread of their yoga. So that's very important. And pretty soon they will remember their past lifetimes and they'll put it all together in one thread. What's that word? Thread. Sutratman. That's the Atman running through everything. It's also the Divine Mother Wisdom running through every one of these slokas. If I was to be able to tie a thread to this book and pick it up and the whole book would rise. You see, that's like the one thread that's running through it all. So when you become aware of that thread of your own true nature, then you can pay it forward into each lifetime. And you should, with great acumen and great ability, great effectivity. The quote here by Vishishta is, "The primary disease of the mind is desire for rebirth." All of the diseases will come from that. Who can argue? Let's see, if I was never reborn, I never would have suffered that cancer or those migraines. See, so the primary disease of the mind is the desire to be reborn. It bears some thinking about. The secondary disease of the mind is reincarnation devoid of discriminative wisdom. That is, you're saying if you're going to be reborn, bring your wisdom with you. Sort of like visa or something. Don't leave home without it, right? So if you're leaving the home of the Atman and coming into the world, bring the discriminating wisdom that you learned in the past lifetime with you and apply it right away. Like Manas should have done, instead of going around the spider web. You know. Finally he found his way to Guru, mantra, initiation, the end of desires, and knowledge of himself. And he was free. So this is one of my favorite Yoga Vishishta teachings. First, disease of the mind, desire for rebirth. Second, getting reborn without discriminating wisdom. Because you do see people who are born with discriminating wisdom, and they're the real movers of the world. They're the real great souls, like Swamiji. And so, from its absence comes lack of control of the senses and the inability to quell desires. See how it really relates back up to all the problems of desires, the effacement of desires, the solution. So it does never be devoid of this discriminating wisdom. This is called what? Discriminating wisdom? Viveka. Yeah, the one in white there, underlined. Viveka, whom he took his name after. Let's go over in the remaining few minutes to Viveka of Bhakti. The failure to implement Viveka into the path of Bhakti, you all know what that is, right? Path of devotion. Leads to worship of the ego rather than authentic love of God. You see a lot of people in that predicament. The outcome is preoccupation with surface practices like asana and affectatious singing and dancing. Like you see in the West now, people getting together and doing these kirtans and dressing up in yogic clothes and doing asana and so forth, and never getting to the fifth limb of yoga, pretty much gravitating at this lower level of hatha, physical things only. As if we should find out that our problem with materialism was physical things. Oh, well then we should become spiritual, right? So then we go and we concentrate on physical things again. See? It provides no profound solution. So wake up from that predicament and get yourself into these higher practices, headed by Viveka. Apply this Viveka in everything you do, in your path of Bhakti. Am I loving my ego or am I loving God? In almost all cases, you'll have to admit you're loving your ego. That's a problem. How much do I love God? And that's why Sri Ramakrishna has come. He loved God. He didn't love himself. I mean, yes, he loved himself, but he didn't have a self to love, really. That's what I'm saying. It was just effaced completely. And his whole life was lived for God. And he wept for tears for God. He used to say, people ask him, how do I get free? Well, try and weep one tear for God. You're weeping jugs of tears for family, wife, money, possessions. Just try and weep one sincere tear for God. But all of his tears were sincere tears for God, realization. The sun would go down in his 30s, the sun would go down, he'd roll on the ground and throw dust on himself. And, oh, another 24 hours has passed, Mother, and I haven't realized God yet. Put himself to the task for it. And that was real love for God. Just one example. Let's take this final, go a few minutes over, please, because we've now reached the end of our time. But let's take this final to finish the chart. That's Viveka in karma, or activity. How do you discriminate in action? Of course, read your Gita. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has a lot to say about that. But here's what one of the things he says is, that one attains to perfection who, restraining the mind and the senses via discrimination, directs all his organs along the path of dharmic work. So, he used to say, these ordinances of the scriptures, you should learn them and follow them. The scriptures will tell you how to act in the world. And so you won't accrue karma. Shankara is on the other side. Nice combination, the Vaishnava, as it were, and the Shaivite. Shankara says, sure knowledge of Brahman is gained by meditation upon correct teachings given by the illumined gurus, and never through sacred ablutions, almsgiving, or hundreds of breathing exercises. So again, pretty much assuming that stance which I took over here, that asanas, breathing exercises, giving generously alms to people, bathing yourself in the holy river. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, all the vultures of your transgression sit on your shoulders, and you head for the Ganges. As soon as you get near the Ganges, these vultures that are sitting on your shoulder go and perch in trees, because you're purifying yourself. So you get in the Ganges and you're pure, you come out. As soon as you get a few feet from the Ganges, these vultures come back and perch back on your shoulders. See, So it's going to take a lot more than just passing all your responsibility off to some god or some devil, and saying, "Oh, I'm free now," but you didn't really do the work to neutralize your karma. That work is done with discrimination. In your mind, basically. It's done in your mind. Your body will follow your mind if you master your mind. The body will become a puppy. It's the other way around now. It's body first, then brain. But brain and mind are different. Mind is consciousness. The brain is just a noodle in your head with a little ability. So, in that way, Shankara brings the sword of discrimination down on the tree of samsara. I usually show this sword of discrimination side by side with the tree of samskara. Those are both his teachings. And so we end with this beautiful teaching by Lord Vashishta, fitting, in the scripture called Jivan Mukti Viveka. And this is the discrimination of a living, liberated soul. It's a beautiful scripture. He says, "The sterling virtue of discrimination, of discriminative restraint, relies upon higher knowledge, and that noble wisdom depends upon this self-same virtue, even as the lake and the lotus thrive upon one another." That's a nice analogy. So discrimination and spirituality thrive on each other, just like the lotus and the lake. Through such rare and incomparable practice are the fetters of the heart severed, just like the threads running through a lotus when its stalk is cut. The lotus stalk has all those threads. You just took a sword and whacked right through it. So just like that way, all these fetters are cut asunder, rent asunder, cut through when you bring this practice of viveka to bear. And that's an activity. Now, another way that I wanted to show you this is viveka in meditation. And so that's kind of what we're getting at there. You want to meditate each day and ask your mind, just sit there and come empty or something, but you want to check your mind and say what kind of meditation you're having that day and what you come out of it with. And keep some discrimination going in your head, not just let your mind wander or become blank. That's kind of the two of the four problems in meditation for most people. So you want to keep some consciousness to bear there, and that discrimination will make you more aware of, like an Eskimo studying snow conditions, will make you aware of the shifts of your consciousness, what conditions it's going through day to day. And Holy Mother used to say that. So you have to watch your mind shift. And that's why you meditate at the same time every morning, because you'll see which guna your mind bring in overnight. Whether if it feels dull or if it feels restless or if it feels balanced, you'll be able to identify that. So that's studying the snow conditions. But you're not. If you weren't there every day to watch your mind do that, then you're not a very good. You're a dead Eskimo. You're a walking dead Eskimo. So it's just a matter of time before you will fall out. So beautiful teachings on discrimination. We'll pick that up tomorrow morning, right there, and go on with a couple more charts. 2 of them brand new for you. And so here, let's end with a chant. Om Sato,
Om Sato Ma Satgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrichorma Amritam Gamaya, Avira Vira Maiti, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Tenam Paricham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us and may peace be unto all. Om